this idea that gender roles are pernicious and evil and oppressive, is almost always based on the most extravagant sexist caricature of what it means to be a man and a woman, right? Like toxic masculinity is itself not a description of a virtuous man. It's a description of a boor, right? It's a description of somebody whose, sort of boyish impulses have never been tamed by the great civilizational diktats of things like chivalry, right? And so we set up these caricatures of manhood and womanhood and what's expected of men and women in traditional societies. And then we say, well, isn't that terrible, so we must abolish it all. But one of the things that comes out if you actually look at, for example, ancient Athenian society in the 5th century BC, which is where I think I took some of those cross-dressing examples. I was particularly talking about Euripides, right, and Bacchae. But, there's an enormous awareness that these binary realities of our humanity are not like completely impermeable, and that men have something to learn from women have something to learn from men. I mean, this is the great tradition of all of this stuff. And when I read Emma's piece about Twitter and manliness, the first thing that came to my mind was Plutarch's sayings of the Spartan women. Plutarch, the essayist, records all of these things that Spartan women used to say to their kids. Very gruff and assertive, not at all what you would think of as kind of this caricature, this, I think, feminist caricature of the traditional homemaker. Things like, Spartan women can assert themselves to men because they're the only women who give birth to real men, and come back, go into battle and come back carried on your shield or holding it. That is, don't surrender, die rather than surrender. And, Clytemnestra, not a great role model, but is called man-minded in Aeschylus. These sort of, the notion that these transgressions exist was never thought to be an argument against the existence or the value of the categories. And to me, it's kind of just a stupid argument to say, like, oh, look, there's this fuzziness around the edges. There are certain edge cases, and therefore, all of this needs to be torn down. That just seems like a failure in logic, and also deeply ahistorical.